And with that, Philip, I would love to go ahead and get started and have you introduce our amazing guest speaker. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so I can pass the ball over to her.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys for all jumping on today. But I have the special honor of introducing someone who's been incredibly influential in my life. But to make a very long story short, because it's not about me today, it's about her. She was my undergraduate advisor, and she is the one who started me on the path to becoming a school psychologist. And that's what eventually led me here to Winston. So you guys can thank her for that. But today, our guest speaker is Dr. Jennifer Shewmaker. She is currently serving as the Dean of the College of Education and Human Services and Professor of Psychology at Abilene Christian University. She is the author of 2 books on media's impact on childhood development. She's also a nationally certified school psychologist and a licensed specialist in school psychology. And she has spent her career partnering with parents and professionals in the educational and nonprofit health fields. And that is something that she's very passionate about doing and continues to do so. So we are extremely lucky to have her join us today and bring her really vast knowledge and experience to the table to kind of share with us. So without further ado, Dr. Shewmaker, you can take the stage.
Thank you, Philip. It's so fun to get the chance to be with Philip in this role. As he said, we've known each other for a long time, and he and I both fell in love with school psychology at different points in time and have been able to share that love for the work that we do. So I'm really thankful to you, Philip, for inviting me and for the opportunity to get to be with you all today. Before I start trying to share the screen, I wanted to tell you that I come to you today as a school psychologist and professor and dean, but I also come to you as a mother, and I have 3 daughters myself and have walked this journey of social media with them. My oldest is 22 and our youngest is still in high school. And so we're continuing to figure out how to use social media and how to help set boundaries for our daughter and help her use that well herself as an adolescent. And so I just wanted to make sure I leave some time here at the end for us to be able to do some Q&A and talk about some issues that are on your minds. Thank you for filling out the survey that Philip shared with you. I think that was really helpful for me to hear what are the things that are on your minds. And from all of us, I really see a lot of the same things. We're worried about security, we're worried about bullying, we're worried about them making healthy and effective choices in different ways. And so what I'm going to do is share some information with you about social media and how it works, so we understand why is it so appealing to our children, but also to us. And then what are some ways that we can equip them to use it most effectively? I really like to think of it as just like anything else, a tool that we can use well and effectively, or we can use it ineffectively. And how do we help our children move into that effective way of doing things? So let me see if I can now move. There we go. There we go. So you all may be familiar with the idea of the Marshmallow Test. I love having this picture because I often show a video of the Marshmallow Test to my college students as we're starting class. And the idea is that the child is supposed to delay gratification. So they have the marshmallow in front of them and they're waiting. So if they wait long enough, they get a second marshmallow. If they eat it immediately, they don't. They only get the one. And what we see with social media is that quite often the marshmallow in our room is this, right? For ourselves, we have social media is calling to us. I wonder what so-and-so posted today, or I wonder if anyone liked my post that I made yet. And the reason that happens is that social media is designed to capitalize on our pre-existing social drives. Those are drives to build connections with other people and to manage our impression on others. And so when we are on social media, all of those same parts of our brains that are activated and given rewards for connecting with people and for managing our impressions and making good impressions and belonging to a social group, those are all activated when we're using social media, which is why it's so appealing and why we keep feeling drawn back to it. So we don't have to feel bad about that. We just need to know that's how it is. So I wanted to share with you these kind of 5 different ways that we use social media. So there's 5 components of what we do and our children do when they're involved with social media. First is broadcasting. Of course, that's sharing our own information, pictures, whatever it is that we want to share with people. And then the second, which is plays into that interaction that we have socially, is receiving feedback. So we get feedback on, oh, people really liked that picture I posted of my vacation or that quote that I shared. We also do an observation. So we're seeing what other people are doing, what they're sharing, and we provide feedback. So again, you have that interaction, that social interaction that you're getting that's so rewarding. And then number 5, I think, is really important for us to think about as parents and teachers. And that is this comparison piece. So what we found is that when we're using social media, we're not just broadcasting and getting feedback and observing and providing feedback, but we're also, which we do face-to-face too, we're comparing. Does that person seem more socially successful than I do? Or does that person seem to be doing things in their life that I wish I were doing? And so what happens quite often is that we will compare someone's social media life to our face-to-face life, because people don't tend to share their struggles on social media. And so helping for us to understand that, and then helping our child think about, okay, all those things I'm feeling jealous about, maybe I see some of my friends out together and they didn't invite me. And I think, I wish I was there. Or maybe I see another group of people doing something I wish I was a part of. That comparison piece is important to be aware of, but it's also important for us to think about, how do I help the child in my life think about this realistically? Because what they're seeing is just a little piece of that person's life that they're choosing to broadcast. It's not their whole life. It's not their struggles. And so you don't want to compare your face-to-face life with someone else's social media life. I just wanted to quickly, because I'm a psychologist, I have to talk about identity development and theory. And so I just wanted to quickly mention that one of the things that's important for us to think about is this idea that our child exists within a system of forces that impact their development and that they impact. There's an interaction going on all the time between the child and their environment. So the closest environment, what we call the microsystem, those are things like the family, your close peers, the people you're with every day. And then you have the exosystem, or the mesosystem is things like the school as a whole. So not the people they're interacting every day, your work as a parent. And then the exosystem is that broader piece. And that's where social media lives. But what's changed recently as we've become more and more involved with social media, and it's evolved itself, is the social media and the exosystem has started moving into the mesosystem and maybe even the microsystem if you're communicating with people in your microsystem quite often through social media. So it does have an impact. It is connected to your child. And what we want to think about is, how do we help them then have healthy interactions? Since it's not just coming one way, they have the choice to make healthy choices about their responses. Excuse me, need to get a drink. So how do we help them do that? How do we help them think about the systems that might be influencing? So one thing I did want to point out to you too, I think it's really important to keep in mind is that there have been changes in the media landscape. So recent research tells us that 42% of children between the ages of 0 and 8 now have their own tablets. 96% or 98% of children between 0 and 18 live in a home with a television and a mobile device. So that's almost everybody. So you have this big percentage, almost half, not quite, of our younger children who have their iPad or some other tablet device that they're able to connect out with. And then almost everyone has it in their home. We also see that 42% of children aged 0 to 8, 34 age 8 to 12, and then 37% age 13 to 18 live in homes where media is always on, where they're seeing screens being used a lot. And so that's influencing the way they think about using screens. I think it's important to keep that in mind, that ownership of mobile devices is different. I was talking to a group of college freshmen this morning, and I asked them the question, how many of you had your own mobile device when you were in elementary school? So these are students that are 18 or 19 at this point. They've just graduated from high school and come to college. Nobody raised their hand. So I said, what about in middle school? So when you were 11, 12, 13, there were a few, but not very many who had them then. Most of them didn't get them until high school. So I asked them, well, what about your younger siblings? If you have younger siblings who are in elementary or middle school, do they have devices? And they all said yes. So what we're seeing is that children are using devices at earlier ages than they used to as well. So there really is this change in the accessibility and the use. And of course, social media and the landscape itself has changed too. So I wanted to pull that up. These are just a few of the different apps that your children may be using or may be interested in. And as we all know, it's changing all the time. And so I have a hard time, and I'm sure that you all have a hard time keeping up with what apps are your children using? What are they using most often? Because it's probably not the one that you're using. And so it's really important as a parent and as teachers for us to think about what are they using and how are they using it? And what are the privacy controls on that particular app? Because they're not the same on all of them. And so having your child, for example, on Instagram, where they can have a private account and you can see who's following them and who they're following, might be different than having them on. It used to be that Twitter, you couldn't have a private account. Now you can. TikTok is a little different. So they're all a little bit different. And we need to know what our kids are using and what kind of things are set up for their privacy. I also wanted to mention this to you. I think you all probably know this, but I wanted to point out that, of course, the most highly followed accounts right now are usually celebrities or sports figures, professional athletes, but there are also influencers or micro celebrities that have a really strong following. And so sometimes you may hear your child talking about someone, even with each other at school. They may be talking about people that you have no idea who they are. It may be someone who has a YouTube channel. It may be someone who plays certain games online. It may be someone who's a TikTok influencer. So just keep in mind that they are being influenced by people that you may not even know who they are. And the thing to remember about that is, again, you need to keep up with what they're using and I was talking earlier before we started with, don't be afraid as a parent to set rules around the use of mobile devices and the use of social media. As a parent myself, with kids now that are older. What I've learned is that I have to talk with them about this just in the same way I would talk with them about don't open the door to people you don't know. It's the same kind of thing. There are people out there who might say they're one person and really be another. So how do we set up rules that can help you make the most healthy choices? So don't be afraid of having those conversations. I also wanted to point out that there's a recent trend that you may have heard some of your kids talking about, of media influencers discussing mental health. Now, sometimes this is really helpful because they have links or connections to mental health professionals. They may be talking about and destigmatizing depression or anxiety or something like that. But other times, children and adolescents may be hearing about mental health issues. For example, two that have come up recently for us at the college level. Bipolar has been around for a while. The other one is dissociative identity disorders. So we have students in college who are hearing about this online, not talking to a professional, and kind of self-diagnosing themselves with some mental health issues, and they're not getting the help they need when they do that. And so if you hear your kids talking about bipolar, dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder, anything like that, you may want to ask some questions and find out, where are you hearing about that from? Who are you hearing or talking with about it? How can we get you some better information? Because you don't want them just getting their information, obviously, about mental health from social media. I did want to point out that one thing that we're seeing is that some platforms are rolling out mental health resources. So TikTok recently rolled out some research because of some negative, or some resources because of some negative research that had come out about Instagram. And so what we're seeing is that some of these platforms are responding by providing in-app guides that address topics like signs of struggling, steps to create a connection, advice about eating and body concerns, really trying to help people get the resources they need in dealing with mental health issues. So you may hear your kids talking about some of that, finding resources around issues that they're interested in looking into. And a good example is with TikTok right now. If someone were to get on there and search suicide, instead of getting, a video about how to commit suicide, which they might have found before, what they're getting now is information for local support groups, guidance about treatment options, connections for who they can call for help, things like that. So that's an interesting new thing that's just a pretty recent development for social media. I did want to show you just a few stats. This is all people, so this is adults too. You can see that people are using social media on a daily basis. And what I wanted to point out is that this YouTube growth is something that we need to pay attention to, because parents are telling us in the research through the Pew Research Center that their children 11 and under are watching YouTube. And so it's important to keep in mind that YouTube isn't just videos they can watch. They can actually interact with people on there. They can have conversations. They may stumble onto something they didn't mean to see. And so we need to be paying attention to that one in particular. And I wanted to point that out because research tells us that our younger kids are using it. And then I just wanted to mention that there are benefits and challenges to social media use. It can really increase opportunities for learning. You may have kids who love to find out about how to do certain things, and they can definitely use social media in that way. And we want to help them see that as an opportunity to learn. They can build new relationships. I know kids right now who high school students who still play Minecraft together. They get on and they do things together online. And that's good. They're not even necessarily meeting new people, but they could be just building relationships with people they already know. We mentioned that during COVID, this was one way they could stay connected to their friends who they couldn't see. Well, COVID is still going on, obviously, but during the isolation phase that we were in. But we do see that it can interfere with emotional intelligence and developing those face-to-face relationship skills. It can distract from meaningful and important things that we do in our lives. So really what we want to do is to help our kids see it as a tool to build confidence, to build competence, to really help them learn to be purposeful consumers and creators of media. And I think we are on track for that, because what we see in the research is that most of teens who use cell phones, they're doing it. Sometimes they use it to pass time because they, are bored, or they're just waiting for something, but they're also using it to connect with other people. They're using it to learn new things. So they do see the positives in how they can use this, but they also are paying attention to those negatives. So our teenagers are indicating that they have mixed feelings about social media, that they realize there's some really good things there, but they worry about certain negative impacts. So some of you had mentioned, and you can see this reflected in our teenagers' responses too, bullying. They're worried about that, how it impacts relationships, how it might harm our in-person contact with each other and give us unrealistic ideas about other people's lives, how might feel peer pressure to do things. So they are, by the time they're teenagers, able to really think about this in a different way. And I would say, even I work with middle schoolers too, and even with middle school and late elementary, we can start having these conversations with them. And so what I'd like to do here in the last few minutes of my presentation is share with you some ideas about specific activities that you could do and that we do with children and adolescents. And then we'll open it up for questions. So first, there's the focus on identity. We really want to help our kids explore the idea that real life identity and online identity may be two different things. And the people that you see who are presenting in a certain way, that may not be what their real life feels like. We want to help them think about that online life is chosen. I'm only going to curate and share with you those really good things. I'm probably not going to put the most boring day ever that I had on there. Nobody shares that stuff. So really having conversations with them about what they see and what they share, and how those two things aren't the whole picture of someone else. I do want to think about this idea of the implications with your older children, the implications of digitally representing your ideal life while living your actual life. There's some cognitive dissonance there. That's what we would say in psychology, is that I'm getting two different messages and I'm sharing two different messages about myself. So what do I do with that? That doesn't mean I want to share lots of negative, but do I think about how might I share more realistically? And I'm going to show you some ways that we can do that. So really, we want to help them identify their own reasons for using social media. What are you getting out of it? What are the pieces you really like? Consider how they want others to see them. And then think about how their use of social media platforms contributes to how they show people who they really are. Like, this is me and I want to be authentic. I just put this picture up because I think one of the key things that we see in social media is that we use it for self-presentation. This is a really important social component of our lives, is how other people see us. And we've learned to use social media in ways that may not always be healthy. I'm going to skip past this one. I'll just mention that these are celebrities, and you could talk to your kids about this, who have left social media because they were bullied, or because they realized it was taking up too much time, or because they didn't feel authentic in how they were portraying themselves. So you might even have conversations about that. Are there people they know who have left social media and why? So I'll just mention a couple of different activities that you can do. One is called Who Does It Look Like I Am? And we want to talk here about who we're showing ourselves to be. Really, the key is to think about who you are and who we present ourselves to be. There's a lot of really interesting before and after Photoshop pictures that you can find online. You can Google before and after Photoshop. You could even look at those together and say, okay, so if I'm editing images of myself, what would someone who knows me in person say? Does that look like me or not? What would someone who doesn't know me in person and only sees who I am online, what would they think about who I am? We could talk about which pictures we choose to show and why we choose to show them, or what things we talk about doing, the activities. Like most of us don't share that we went to the dentist that day. Why is that not interesting? But going to a concert is, have those conversations with them about what is it we're choosing. And the idea here is for them to think about it for themselves, but also to get them thinking about other people. You're not seeing the whole picture of their life. You're just seeing the fun parts, and that's fine, but you need to know that's what you're seeing. Another one that I really like to do is this activity called To Share or Not to Share. And this can be really important when we're talking about consent. It's a really good conversation to lead into consent in other areas as well. But think about, so I usually do it as a what if game. Like, think about the worst picture that's ever been taken of you. How would you feel if your friend decided to post that on social media for everyone to see? And get them to talk through why that feeling and why would they not want that shared? Of course, and we all feel that way. So it's not bad to feel that way. But so then you can transition the conversation to sharing the images of other people. So knowing that you have certain images you want shared and others you don't, how do you make choices about which images you share from of your friends? How do you make rules together about sharing digital images? And that's something I've had to learn with my own children, because when they came along, well, social media, I think I got on Facebook maybe in 2009 or something. It's been a long time. And then Instagram. And so I've learned to ask them, do you mind if I share this picture? And you can get your teacher child, by modeling that, to start asking other people, hey, do you mind if I share this picture of you? And if they say no, that's okay. They have permission to say no and to withhold consent. And you also have that. So if someone says, hey, can I share this? And you don't like it, just tell them, no, I'd rather you not. So this is a really good conversation to have with them, to get them thinking about what they share and don't share about other people. And then this one, I'm just going to quickly go through because I have a couple others I want to share with you before we do some Q&A time. This digital identity activity is a really good, because what you can get kids to do, and you can do it yourself, is you write down all your usernames, you list your favorite websites, your social media, write down the name of apps, blogs, sites you often visit. So basically you're kind of putting together a record of your social media life. So that's step one, is to pull those things together. And then I'm going to move over to step two. You're going to create, you could do this online, as a computer document, or you could even actually do it on paper if you want to with younger kids. A document called My Digital Identity. I do this with college students, and a lot of them are really surprised. You get them to post their profile pictures, their most recent selfies, any about pages they have, likes, interests, tagged photos, anything that people could find if they went searching for them online on social media. And then this is the important piece. Once you've done that, you reflect together on what you see. So how might other people view me if this is all they know about me? Say I'm applying for a job and they go look online. What are they seeing and what are they going to think about who I am and what my interests are and what my priorities are? Does it match who I am in real life or not? What does it say about how I view myself and what my priorities are and what's important to me? And is this what I want other people to see me as? And one of the things when we do this with college students that we see is that they will say, "Ooh, I'm not sure that's what I want people to see." When they go on and look for, say I'm applying to graduate school or I'm applying for a job and they search for me, I don't think I want them seeing those pictures of me at that party or whatever it is that was tagged. So this is a really fun and eye-opening kind of activity that you can do together. You can do it as well if you use social media so that you're helping and modeling for your child. Maybe you're rethinking something too, and they get to have that conversation with you. I wanted to, some of you had talked about the idea of your child finding information online and how do you know what's good and what's not really a realistic source. So for your older kids, they may be familiar with the CRAP test. The CRAP test is something we do when we are teaching children, our adolescents and college students writing. So when we're teaching them about using professional sources, we ask them to look at these things and we say, is it current? What's the timeliness of the information? Is it relevant? Is that information answering the question? Who's the intended audience? And is it appropriate to what I'm looking for? Authority. This one is really important. And you could even just focus on one of these with your younger kids. Say they bring a piece of information to you and you think, I don't know if that's true or not. The first question you want to help them ask is, who said that? Where did they get their information? What's their authority? Why would they know about that? And really think about who they're getting their information from. Is that person qualified to comment on this? Is it accurate? So what's the reliability of the information? Where does it come from? Is it supported by evidence? And then I really love this one. You could also just focus on this one with your younger kids. What's the purpose of the information? So is someone sharing this with me because they want to persuade me or they want to influence me? Something that I don't know if how many of you have seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix, but one of the quotes from that documentary is, if you're not sure what the product is, you're the product. And so we need to know that we are being influenced all the time to buy things or to think in certain ways so that we can respond to advertisements in different ways. So our data that we share online, our thoughts, our feelings, we are being influenced all the time. So getting your kids to think about, are they trying to get you to buy something? Or are they just sharing information? Is this a teaching video that you're watching? Are they entertaining you? Are they persuading? What's it for? What are they doing this for? That will help really think about, what do I do with that piece of information? And then the last thing I wanted to address as we before we do our Q&A time, because some of you brought this up too, is the permanence of generating online content. We really want to help our kids, if they're using social media, think about the fact that they need to be managing their online image. And as digital natives, or iGen, sometimes people call students right now, they will have differing levels of comfort in using technology. But some things to keep in mind in general is that many of them will have grown up digital, which means that their communication practices, their ethics, their identity, and thinking about how they tell people about who they are, those have all been shaped by their interactions with digital media, much different than the way you and I grew up. And even my 22-year-old daughter and my 16-year-old daughter have different ways of using technology, and they've grown up with different things. The average amount of time that a teen spends on social media each day is about an hour and 10 minutes. And that frequency of use has been increasing over the past 5 years. So in 2019, we had about 63% of teens using social media every day. Back in 2015, it was only 45%. And I bet if we went and looked today, we would even see a higher number, because during COVID, people did start using it more often because it was the only way to connect. So I'm just going to mention these, and then I'll tell you one activity that you can do to help them think about online permanence. One of them, the things I wanted to mention, is we really need to develop what we call ethical ways of thinking. So getting them to think about, is what I post for the good of myself and the good of other people? So really thinking about the opportunities to connect and build relationships that could be positive, but I might have some blind spots. I might not think about the potential effects of my actions on other people, whether that's people I know, like my grandparents or my parents or my teacher or my friend who I'm posting about, or people I don't know. And we want to think about, is there potential to harm myself or other people when I post something, even if they think it's a funny bantering that they're doing online. I have seen, and I'm sure you may have as well, physical fights break out because of something that happened on Instagram the day before, where people thought one person thought they were playing with each other and the other person got angry. So help them think through, if I post in certain ways or respond in certain ways, who might that affect and how? And then this piece about roles and responsibilities. Who do I have commitments to? Am I a member of a team, a school, a class? Those kind of things are important. Would my coach be upset if I said that? Would that hurt our team in some way, or our classroom in some way? What about our family? How might my online behavior affect lots of different people? And here you can lay it out for them in terms of, okay, like I said, maybe what if your grandparents saw that? What if your little brother or sister saw that, or your cousin who looks up to you? What if your teacher saw that? So get them thinking about the wide range of people that might be affected by something they share. And then this activity I wanted to share, this is simple and it's messy, but it really makes the point. So we will get tubes of toothpaste, cheap ones, and do this activity with middle school kids, and you could do this with upper elementary as well, and definitely high school. And we'll have them squeeze, okay, everybody, there's groups of maybe 3, but you could do this one-on-one too. And we have them squeeze all the toothpaste out. Okay, who can squeeze it out the fastest? And then we say, okay, now put it back in. And of course, you can imagine they all sit there like, it doesn't go back in like that. And the point is that we make to them is that's right. And that's how social media can be too. When you put things out there, you have to think about what's going to be the effect of that comment I made or that picture I shared, or whatever it is that you're doing before you do it. So before we squeeze the toothpaste, we are thinking, I'm going to have to make sure I know I have the stuff to clean this up. Before you post online, you need to be thinking about, who might this affect? How might it affect them? Could there be some negatives? And let me think about that before I share it. Or if I've thought about it and I share it anyway, and then later I have reservations, go back and delete it. They need to know that they can make those choices and make some changes. So the last thing I wanted to share with you is this quote that I love because I think it's really true. Social media is a potent tool. It can be a tool for education. It can be a tool for change. We can use it responsibly to shape the world we live in. And so if we can help our children see that and understand that I can use this in a healthy, effective way, but I have to be thoughtful and I have to be intentional, then we can really help ourselves and help our children approach this as a tool for their use that they can be confident in and they can learn how to use in a healthy and effective way. So I'm going to stop sharing now and then open up opportunity for us to have some conversation.
If you want to raise your hand, if you know how to raise your hand in Zoom, feel free to raise your hand. If not, and you want to put it in chat, I'm more than happy to monitor chat as well. Questions. I know this is a very much talked about topic among all of our families. So this is a great time to bend Jennifer's ear. Jennifer, by the way, the toothpaste thing is spot on. I remember when I was really little and I went to a private school and the priest was up talking to us. We were little, we were like first graders, and he brought a tube of toothpaste, and it had to do with the lesson, I guess, but I just remember the tube of toothpaste, and he squeezed it out and he goes, these are our words. We can't put the toothpaste back in. So think about what you say before you say it to someone else. So it still applies today, even more so because that's so permanent out there in the world. So, okay, I've got something in chat from Lance. I've read that Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and Tim Cook have all set rules within their families that kids could not have social media account and or a phone until age 14. Steve Jobs also had that rule with his kids on not having a phone until age 14. What are your thoughts on the appropriate age for having a phone and social media account?
Great question. That is a great question. And I will say that I actually also used the 14 rule for my children. I didn't actually say 14. What I said was high school. So when you go to high school, then mainly because they were developing more independence. And I knew that they would have after school activities and they would need to be able to get in touch with me in different ways than they had before. I do think you really want to think about this. If you have middle schoolers and they already have one, then this kind of goes into the next question. You're really going to have to think a lot about monitoring. And I want to just say that as a parent myself, I did do that with my younger kids. My kids are old enough now that I will watch what they're doing on social media as far as like I follow them or whatever. But of course, I'm not saying you can't do this or that. My 16-year-old, we still have conversations, but she's developed the ability to have some independence there because she showed me what she was doing before. So if you've got middle schoolers who are on having a phone, and if they have a phone, they probably have social media, even if you don't know about it. So you need to really think about that and think about how you want to monitor it. My recommendation for monitoring, and there's so many different things. Of course, there's some apps that you can use. I didn't tend to do that. I tended to have them put their account also on mine. So under Instagram, where I sign in, they would also put their account and put their password in. So at any time, I could randomly go in and just look and see what they were posting, who was messaging them. The reason I did it that way instead of just watching from outside was because I wanted to look at the messages when they were even at 14. I wanted to be able to see, because there are predators out there who will pretend to be other younger people. And we know that happens. It's in the news. And so my recommendation is when you talk to your child about giving them a phone or a device, that you say, this is mine and I'm paying for it and I'm paying for the service. I'm letting you use it. And what that means is there are boundaries around it. And then you figure out what those are going to be for you. I tended to say I should have access to your social media accounts at all time whenever I want to. And like I said, that changes as they get older and they've shown you that they can use it responsibly. You don't have to feel bad about doing that, though, with your younger kids, because if they're going to be using it, you need to know that they're using it in a way that's safe. And you can just tell them that. Just say, it's my job to help you figure out how to use this. And you might even say, I'm still learning how to use this, because we all are. I mean, it changes all the time. And together, we're going to figure out the safest and most effective way to use that. But that means you can't have total privacy. And if they can't live with that, they just don't need to have it. That's okay. They don't have to have the phone. But that's what I would do. That's how I did it. And I recommend that to parents, is that you set those boundaries and make them crystal clear. So there's no misunderstandings with your kids on what you're going to be looking at and monitoring.
Wonderful. That was actually the next question, was what do you recommend monitoring your kids on social media? So you kind of led straight into that. So Chris, I hope that answered your question. I definitely think it's something that we're all trying to figure out. It's time consuming, right? To be able to go. I
Yes.
actually spent 30 minutes last night looking. We just gave our 13-year-olds their first phone. That was the deal. They had to wait until they turned 13. So, and yeah, I learned about Discord, which none of you know what that is. That is a social media platform that younger kids use today to have conversations. And iFunny, I hadn't heard of iFunny, so I was behind the times on that. So I had a little learning curve last night, and I did bring my 17-year-old and ask him some questions. So I was like, what's this? He was like, oh, he shouldn't have that. I was like, oh, this is great information.
Yes. That's a really good point. If you have older kids, or if you have, friends with kids that are older that you trust their judgment, ask them those questions. Well, I have done that with my oldest daughter, is about 5 years older than my youngest. And I'll ask sometimes, should she be on there? I try to go on and look at every single app that she's going to use. I get on and use it. It takes time. And that's why I say, if you can't put the time in place, or if you feel uncomfortable with the boundaries, then you might not make the choice to give them the phone, or you might give them the phone with a lot of controls on it. You can choose to do that. And sometimes that may be the better option for you, because it does take a lot of time to research. But I think if you can open the door and start the conversation at the beginning of, here's when you're going to have this, and here's how we're going to use it, that will really help just have that transparency throughout. And as they get older, you can gradually loosen the reins as you see them being able to do that well.
Perfect. We have another question from Carissa, actually. She said, what do you recommend for a conversation starter on a post that is concerning you?
That's a really great question. You could do this with their own posts, or you could do this with a post like a friend of theirs made. If it's a friend, you might start by saying, tell me what you thought of that. How did you feel about that post? If it's their post, I think I would immediately say, hey, tell me about what you were thinking when you made that. And say to them, that post concerns me. Let's talk about what I was feeling when I saw it, and then why, and let's talk through. For example, I might have been thinking, if they made a post about, say, a friend. I've actually had to do this with my daughters. Like, how do you think your friend will feel, because they will see it? How do you think they'll feel when they see what you said about them? Do you want them to feel that way? Was that a choice you made? And they may have, or they may not have. They may have not really thought it through. How do you think what you posted, going back to the influence, how do you think that might make your teammates feel? What if your grandparents saw it? Having conversations about the different people in their lives and how they might respond to that post. And I think a question to always ask is that who you want people to see you as? Are you trying to be that person because maybe it was mean? Do you want people to see you as someone who's tough and hurts other people's feelings purposefully? Some kids may say, yes, that's exactly what I was going for. And then you can talk that through, why. But a lot of times that's not what they're going for. They just didn't think about it. So I think if they know you're watching, so that's first, just make sure they know, and then just have that really open conversation about, tell me what you were thinking when you post that. that brought some concerns for me. So let me tell you my thoughts, and then have a dialogue with each other. Sometimes you might need to say, you need to take that down. I have done that before. Like, that's hurtful to your family member or your friend, and you need to take it down. And I think you can do that as well. Now, then they'll make Finstas. Do you all know about Finstas? The fake Instagram that's like their alter ego, and then they try to hide it from you. And there's a lot about that. But if you can try to keep it very transparent and connected, then that will help you be able to have those conversations.
Oh my goodness, so much to learn all the time.
Yes.
I
And it
keep
is
thinking,
evolving. Yeah, I would say if you feel a little overwhelmed, just know that that's okay. That's really normal, because this is changing all the time and social media is evolving. And reach out to each other, seek support, because it's important. But also, it's not don't let yourself get overwhelmed and just step away from it, because I think this is something we can do. We just all need to help each other.
oh, that's the perfect advice. Thank you so much for your time today, for all
Yes.
of your information and wisdom. I'm sure I see clapping coming up on the screen. We're so thankful for all of this today. I hope everybody on the call found this informative as well. Thumbs up coming across. I love it. So a huge round of applause virtually for Jennifer. Thank you so much. And Philip for helping facilitate her joining us today. So thank you all. And if there's anything else, I will conclude the meeting. And
It's great to be with you. Thanks for inviting me.
yes, thank you for being here. We're so grateful.